Well, hey, good Thursday evening to you. How the heck is everybody out there doing? I am your handsome, hairy, and helpful host, Bill Sylvie. And boy, let me tell you what, folks, we have got a fun one for you tonight. We are not only going to continue our exploration of S3 Expedition of the Barrier Peaks, but folks, we're not going in solo. We're not setting another foot on this strange metallic cave somewhere in the distant mountains of the Duchy of Jeff without an expert guide. Because tonight, folks, I, your humble, happy host, the Dungeon Delver, that's me, Bill Sylvie, have brought along a guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please say a big Delver's Dungeon hello to the nicest guy in tabletop gaming, Paul Stormberg.
Hey, Bill, how are you doing?
Yeah, my friend.
Man, I'm excited.
I am too. This is such a great module for so many reasons. Production, writing, concept, the opportunities it creates, just the sheer adventure. Even if you just take it at face value, it's a great module. And we're gonna dig into it. We're gonna have a lot of fun. But
I would like to start by saying it's a terrible module. And I say that it was terrible because when I adventured through it in the 80s, I thought, there's no magic items in here. There's no treasure in here. There is likely only horrible death in here. So why do I love such a terrible adventure? Because there is a mystery in it.
There is a lot of mystery in it. We've touched on it a little bit so far. And I got to tell you, there's three classes of terrible modules. There's modules that are just badly done.
Uh-huh.
Like what is it? The Forest Oracle that literally has paragraphs that look like they were left off by one author and started by another one months later.
Indeed.
There's modules that have great concepts but are badly done. And I'm going to risk the Rotten Tomatoes here, not just from our audience, but from you, and say I classify Temple of Elemental Evil in that category. I think Temple of Elemental Evil is an amazing concept and broadly great ideas. I don't think it was particularly well done, not as well as it could have been done.
Well, we can discuss that at another time.
I think we will. I have thrown down the gauntlet.
I would contest that.
You would contest it, and I'm looking forward to that debate. And then there are modules that are just terribly good, which S3 falls into. Because at first blush, as you say, where's the treasure? Where's the magic items? But we're going to see it's just so much more than that. So how are you? How have you been?
I've been great. I've had some major life stuff happen. My daughter had open heart surgery, and it went fantastically. She had a hole in her heart about the size of a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And she had that her whole life. She's 18, so she just had surgery for it. She recovered and is doing fantastic. So,
well, I'm glad she's on the mend. I truly am, man. That was I remember when you first told me, we're chatting away about shit in my campaign, and you're like, oh yeah, my daughter's got a quarter-sized hole in her heart. And I'm like, why are you talking to me about Dungeons and Dragons? Go sit next to her and hold her hand or something. But I am glad, so glad for both of you, for everybody there at the Stormberg compound at Stormberg Keep, I think should be a D&D module name.
It's brick.
Huh?
It's brick, but it doesn't have any crenellations. So
get on to that, Paul.
I'm working on it.
Anyway, no, we are very glad that she's on the mend. Truly,
I appreciate that, Bill.
That's awesome. So yeah, when I was what happened today, valued viewers, is when I was posting up on Facebook, like I do, I made mention about poking around S3, and then Paul was like, "Hey, we need to talk about that module." And I said, "Hey, come on the show and talk about it." And here we are. I mean, honestly, I can't think of a better pound and a half gray matter to put on this subject than yours. So what we've done so far is we've taken a look at some of those incredible illustrations. I mean, honestly, I think this was early 1E TSR at its finest in terms of production values.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a double gatefold plus an illustration booklet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got everything going for it. And there's a real genius in the depiction of all of that technology. You know, which end do you point towards the enemy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they get
if Gary had made it like a Star Wars blaster pistol, no one would be able to, everybody would go, "Oh, well, I know which end to point at it." But Gary wanted it to be, and then Otis and Rosloff and Diesel, those guys all and Sutherland, they all knocked it out of the park for making them a which end is up sort of a piece of technology.
The one that always got me, and I love to this day, it's such an iconic thing. I actually try and slip it into other sci-fi games, and I get players who protest with me, is the disruptor rifle that basically sits on your shoulder and you have to fire by pressing switches with your...
Everybody wants to look into the little view screen.
Exactly.
I'll just point this around towards my face.
What do you mean make a saving throw versus wands?
So in my game, our 12th level magic user still carries it around to this day, and it's called the Phylactery of the Archmagi. That's how they refer to it. And they only use it in really dire situations.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. That's one of those that, like, you get players, and I would say this is of any tech items in the module, is you get players, and it's as much a problem for you, the dungeon master, as them. Say you take that thing into the Tomb of Horrors and you start playing that beam back and forth across a Caesarak's skull. Well, it says it's only damaged by the gemstones, but this thing is designed to rip atoms apart. So does it work? Does it defy? Or,
DM's prerogative.
Exactly. DM's prerogative. Some say yay, some say nay. Some desperately start flipping through stacks of Dragon magazines.
You're not going to find the answer there.
You're not. And
there are some answers in the Dungeon Master's Guide regarding the mix of technology and magic.
Yes. And one thing, and I had mentioned this previously on the stream, is that if you wanted to build your own science fiction role-playing game, just strip AD&D down to its essentials and build it back up, but with a familiar core for players. And assuming it's the 1980s and they prefer the mechanics of AD&D, all you need is a copy of the Dungeon Master's Guide and a copy of S3. And you've got everything you need right there to run a sci-fi campaign with the AD&D mechanics at the core, but you've got all the tech and everything else because it's just right there in the module.
Well, when I ran it in my own campaign, I decided before I would run it, I would run the players through in a sci-fi campaign, but I used the Star Frontiers rules, and I placed them aboard the ship, and they were the ship's commander, the security officer, the medical officer, the robotics officer, the command section, and everybody had a role, and then they all had a team of individuals that they trained up. And because Star Frontiers had a skill system, that's what I wanted. I wanted them to take their teams of underlings and train up their sections so that they would get better as time went on. And eventually the whole ship ends up with all the mysterious things that happen aboard the ship. I retcon the whole thing so that things are happening in the science fiction game that ultimately result in the crashed spaceship on Earth.
Now, do you go like full ham and have all of the truly weird D&D monsters on Earth as a result of this? Eye of the Deep,
Absolutely.
Mind Flayers, Bulettes, Intellect Devourers, all that came from this
everything.
starship.
So the original starship, where do you want to go from here? Because I could tell you how many levels the original starship had and what it was set up to be like before and how it got to Earth.
Well, that is a phenomenal place to start, because what we have, generally speaking, is just what was published. And I know there was some talk of doing like much beefier extra goodies in this thing, or rather this thing back here. I'm sure you can see it, the Expedition hardback from Goodman, then actually got published. Like, I know they were going to do a facsimile of the tournament module, but the one guy with one willing to share it got ill at the time that they were going to come to him and do the scan and what have you, which is not
Alan. I think it's our friend Alan.
Yeah, it may be, but so, you know, it says, hey, it was played as a tournament module at Origins 2. Beyond that, we have no data. So other than a blank piece of paper that says, here be dragons, we have nothing. Tell us the history of S3, please.
Okay, so Jim Ward started playing with Gary after meeting him in a bookstore in Lake Geneva in 74. And he played all through Castle Greyhawk, and he started wanting to create a sort of science fiction version of D&D. And that ultimately ends up being Metamorphosis Alpha, which is being played and experimented with in very early 1976. And Gary plays in that, plays on that adventure. And at one point during the Castle Greyhawk adventures, the players pick up a cursed scroll, and Gary says, you're all transported to a strange metallic hallway. And they said, okay, Jim, you take over as DM. And threw it back to Jim Ward, who then had to run those players that had gotten transported to the Starship Warden, which was the name of Jim Ward's ship after Ward, obviously. And so Gary had played that. Also, Rob Kuntz had created a level in Castle Greyhawk called the Machine Level, which was nothing but conveyor belts and machines that, you'd go through a room and it would be a crown cap die tool. So your characters would get pounded into little bottle caps if you didn't escape the room. And there were other rooms like a rug beating room and conveyor belts and a slicing dicing room. The most famous explanation was Tim Kask. Tim Kask played a demo game at Gen Con in 1974. He said he played a demo game of D&D and then was hooked. And he said, I played a dwarf and I got encased in lucite and then sliced into 1,000 cubes by laser, but hot damn, I was hooked. And that is the machine level of Castle Greyhawk. So Tim Kask was introduced to D&D by Rob Kuntz, who was running demo games at GaryCon or at Gen Con. And so anyways, so you've got Jim Ward with his sort of sci-fi spaceship, the colony ship sort of concept. And then you've got Rob with lasers and lucite containing machines and packaging machines and all this modern machinery. in Castle Greyhawk, and Gary and Rob kind of throw it all together with pieces of their adventure that happened when their characters were transported to the Warden, and also with some bits of Rob's machine level, and translating all of that into AD&D terms. And so that's where we get the Origins 2 version of it. And all of the characters you see in the back of S3 were the actual pre-generated characters for the adventure. And there's like 20 of them. And that's exactly how many people went through with each part. Was with a lot of players. And so very famously, Alan Hammock played the dwarf character on that list. And he has some fun tales recounting of actually adventuring through that. Yeah, so those 15 players were the number of players in each group. And I think Alan Hammock has a picture online of them all sitting in theater style seating, you know, with all the theater style seats, and they're all kind of leaning over this railing, and there's Tim Cask down below running the game.
I've actually seen that on Cask's timeline, but yeah, that's so
they were all about to get destroyed, and Alan's character said Hanuman, the monkey god, 3 times in a row, and Hanuman showed up and demanded a human sacrifice to save the party. And I think Alan said, "Don't look at me, I'm a dwarf." and then he ate the character next to him, who happened to be a human. So,
well, if we go numerically,
that was at Origins 2.
If we go numerically, and there's no indication that it is. I mean, this could be an entirely arbitrary order.
Number 6 is the dwarf.
He's number 6. The only human next to him is number 7, a neutral magic user. So we can only imagine who that poor fellow was.
Yeah, good stuff. So, and a couple of years ago, I auctioned off Alan's original handwritten character sheet for that character from the adventure. And
nice.
His stats and his magic item matched the adventure exactly. So those characters right there, those are the tournament characters that were actually used to play in the tournament. And 15 characters in one group.
Oh, I can believe it. This thing is colossal. But
there was a lot of quick deaths, I'm sure.
I can imagine. I mean, there's, what is it? We were talking about this last night. You can accidentally turn on a plant growth inducer sprayer, and it causes a 10 by 10 room to fill with russet mold, which is, of course, a radioactive fungus. And then if the players open that, it just vomits out onto them, and they're toast. You know, veg pygmies pop up a little bit after that. But what we get in the printed module.
So that's the background of this module. But the real deeper inspiration of this is from a novel called Nonstop, or Starship, by a British author named Brian Aldiss.
Okay. I am familiar with Mr. Aldiss' work. Some of our viewers might be as well.
So if you read through Nonstop, you will find the welders, the wheelie sleds, the vegapygmies, all the technology in this thing, and the fact that it's a generation ship. In other words, a ship that is traveling sublight speed for so long that a whole generation lives and dies over and over again. And so they are, they at some point during their journey, they stop by a planet and take on some water. And when they take on that water, it has an alien amino acid that precipitates out and alters kind of the common cold, or it alters some human sickness, and it becomes a pandemic aboard the ship. And it wipes out the whole crew. But then another strange thing happens. that the ship is autopiloting its way back to Earth. And what the mutation does is it makes people live through very rapid lives. And so only 6 generations were supposed to pass on the way back to Earth. But because of their increased lifespan due to the amino acids, it ends up being 23 generations before they get back to Earth.
Wow.
And one of the diseases that happens to them as their culture and knowledge of the ship starts to degenerate is that they get these sort of flaps of skin or tendrils or dangly things coming out of their guts. And it just like the veggie pygmies, they sort of devolve into this subhuman sort of species. And anyway, so a lot of the stuff, everybody's trying to get a hold of me. A lot of the stuff you see in this module is very highly influenced by Nonstop. As a matter of fact, at one point, they use the welder to cut through the bulkhead and actually make their way onto the bridge section and try to gain control of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, so that's where all of this stuff comes from and where the influence of this whole thing originates.
Now, you were telling us in the wind up, the original module for this ship, you said it had way more decks than what we got published.
Yeah, if you look at the police headquarters or the security section, in the security chief's office, on page, I'll tell you, so everybody's following along, on page 6, in the south room, it says, built into the desk is a monitoring screen with an on-off switch, a 56-position slider, parentheses, each former level of the ship. So this is part of a 56-level ship, but only part of it.
Wow. So
so it says positions 11 through 16 now show levels 1 through 4, which are the 1 through 6, which are the levels shown in the module. Now, by extrapolation, this ship landed on Earth. It didn't explode and disintegrate into a million pieces. Thus, it's got to have some additional levels. So I actually figured out and broke down the levels to, let's see, section, to where it has, oh, come on. Sorry. That's what happens when I don't have stuff queued up.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So anyway, so there's 56 levels, which means that when you kind of break it all down, oh, come on, find it, Paul. Sorry, just a second. There it is. Okay. So there are, this is section 2 of a 56 level starship.
Okay.
It's section 11 through 12. 11 is the command, bridge, main computer, science quarters, and library. So that's the main bridge. That's the top section. That's the first level. Then there's a service deck, or as Gary calls them, tween decks, which is straight out of Brian Aldiss's Nonstop. Okay. And then there's the next deck, which is deck 13, which is a walkway lounge, the walkway lounge and cargo area overlooking the walkway lounge area that overlooks the botanical gardens. Deck 14 is the botanical gardens, rookery, menagerie, and cargo. Deck 15 is service deck 6. Deck 16 is the theater, the athletic activity areas, the activity deck, and cargo areas. But then there are 3 more levels which should be below that, which are technical repair, recharging, because you can't recharge the power discs, right? And you can't recharge power armor. You have to go to a level of the ship that has those, and it's not on these levels. So then the next level, deck 18, is technical repair, recharging, main robotics, cargo. Deck 19 is service deck 8, and then deck 20 is thorium fusion, power plant, drive deck, cargo, and 2 shuttlecraft. And so that is one section of the ship. There are, by my calculation, there are 5 sections of the ship, or 5 colony decks. In Nonstop, at the very end, when the ship is in Earth's orbit, they break it into sections and allow them to colonize parts of Earth, allow them to live on parts of Earth. So in that book, it breaks into sections. And if you read the text, Gary tells you that this section separated from the rest and went through a black hole and ends up on Earth. Well, right. It has to have a drive section and all those other sections, the recharging section. So all of that is below. We know that there's 5 total colony decks, or 5 total colony sections. Each of those has 10 decks. And then the last section, section 6, I just assume those last 6 levels are the star drive bridge section, which is the star drive for the entire ship, which is similar to the one that Aldous had. So each colony ship is just like the one that we're looking at for S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And there are 5 of those different sections. This section, when they separated, happened to get go through a black hole and spat out onto Earth. But somewhere else, the other 4 sections and the star drive bridge section with the star drive and command section and all that stuff on it is somewhere else as well. Interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting. Vince Snedderson says, stating the obvious, this module was insanely huge if fleshed out. It absolutely is. And we kind of touched on that a little bit when we started looking, when we first started looking into this module. I mean, there are so many possibilities. So we have a high level party going through here, right? Uh-huh. And this is something that this didn't just stick in my head about S3, but it's, how many dungeons have dungeon dressing of a skeleton, right? You're walking through, there's a skeleton in the corner. You have a 12th level cleric. They can resurrect someone who's been dead for up to 120 years. The spaceship in S3 has been on Earth for decades. It doesn't say centuries. It says decades. So if we assume a 10th or 11th or 12th or whatever level cleric who can cast resurrection is on this ship, and they find one of the unfortunate souls who died here, and they hit Captain Kirk with resurrect. You seeing the possibilities here?
But Captain Kirk is insane and has died of a disease. Now, it's this disease. If you go back to Nonstop, there's 2 things that happen on the ship. One is the mutation that causes a pandemic aboard the ship. And it causes people to go insane, and then they die. There's another thing, which is the russet mold, which is a mold that has somehow become irradiated. And because it's irradiated, people who get affected by it will sprout up into being vegapygmies or thornies. Right? Okay. So those are the 2 things going on here. They're separate things. You've got the plague, which the captain, well, I don't know how much, I mean, I'm going to spill all the beans on this thing because the background history of this place is just the most incredible part of it. Because like I said, when I was an adventurer, I was like, oh, well, that was a really hard ass battle. Let's see, it's got 3 quartz gems inside of it. You know? There's not a lot of experience points, treasure. There's no magic items other than the technology stuff, but some of those can be just as dangerous to you as to any enemy.
Yeah.
So for me, it was that mystery. And so the captain goes insane, right? But
Right.
some people have gotten infected by the mold and turn into veggie-pygmies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what happens in the book Nonstop by Brian Aldiss. There's the forward people, you know, like foredeck people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not as degenerated as the aft deck people. And the aft deck people kind of live in jungle areas where the foredeck people, they can still use some of the technology. And so that's the kind of the dichotomy that Gary sets up in the prehistory of this spaceship. Is you've got the people who've been driven mad by the disease or dying of the disease, the people who are functioning normally and trying to find a cure, and then the people who are exposed to the runaway hydroponics experiment in the lab that is hit by radiation, because we know there's radiation on the ship. It's leaked through the hull.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily coming from the ship, but it's leaked into areas of the hull. If you notice, the radiation areas are all along the hull of the place.
I did not catch that, but that is interesting.
And so, and specifically, it says that not that the russet mold is radioactive, but that it's irradiated. So it's been changed by the radiation, or it's been irradiated. And so I think what happens is that the russet mold is just a sample in the hydroponics lab. It's in a hydroponics lab, right? They're growing it for food, you know, maybe medicine, who knows? Maybe it's a sample from a planet, which is how I did it. And then they go through some sort of radiation that goes through the shields. And it affects several areas of the ship, and it changes this russet mold. Or somebody is exposed to the russet mold and they go to repair one of the areas where radiation has leaked around the edge, and it kills them. They fall down dead, and red veggie-pygmies rise up out of their corpses. And so that's what you have. You have 2 things going on. You got the pandemic, the plague, killing everybody on board the ship, and it drives them insane, because that's why the ship commander goes and releases all of the dangerous creatures. Because he's gone insane, because he is affected by the disease. And then all the veggie-pygmies and other creatures or other victims are being killed by the russet mold. And eventually, both things kill everybody on the ship.
Well, so going back to Resing Captain Kirk, first of all, that is amazing. That is fantastic. I love it. But going back to Resing Captain Kirk, resurrection fixes what killed you in the first place. Otherwise, if you cast resurrection on somebody who'd been stabbed by a sword, they'd come back with a massive sword wound in their chest and just fall over dead. So you could make the argument that bringing them back, the disease is gone. Now, that's not to say that they won't get infected 5 minutes later. You know?
Well, for example, Ray's dead. If you have poison in your system, you're still dead. If you have mold spores in your body, you're going to die. And Cure Disease says it cures most diseases.
You're just hell-bent on these poor people staying dead, aren't you?
Oh, no. And you know, there's a diary in one of the places. And when the players found the diary, I had written it out, and they read about their own characters in the Sci-fi campaign and everything that happened to them.
Wow.
And they were like, they didn't realize it, and they go, oh my God, this is our ship.
That's awesome and cruel.
The guy playing, when Commander Brian Haldane, who was the security guy, you know, that picture you just showed of the skeleton lying in a seat, that was his character.
Wow. Nicely played, sir. We do have a question, and I think I can answer this, but you go ahead and put your input on this. This is Tonka Todd's been patiently waiting. How does this compare to the Goodman Games one? To the best of my knowledge, the Goodman Games just has the two separate TSR printings, or three, I can't remember which. And then there's the entire module, but converted over to 5th edition. There is some new Errol Otis art on the inner covers, and an essay by, is it Dave LaForce, who talks about how non-repro blue maps were made at TSR?
Probably Dave.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as I know, it, like, I have the very nice PDF scan of this. It's a little on the dark side, just literally dark in terms of their contrast settings, but it's still crisp and readable. If you don't want to pay for the Goodman Games one, because you don't want that much 5e stuff, then yeah, I would either get Dungeons of Dread, get a print copy of Dungeons of Dread, which is S1, S2, S3, and S4, or get a copy of this PDF and take it to a print shop and have it printed. I would recommend the latter, because Dungeons of Dread's illustration plates, all of those are black and white. You get color plates in this PDF. So that is, I hope that answers your question, Paul, unless you've got anything to add to that.
No, I have not read that yet.
Robert Phillips says, the mold in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords has, yeah, the spores that the myconids can sneeze out onto dead creatures to animate them. Is a little,
and it has other properties like hallucinogenic, and I think they have several different spore powers, but one of them is definitely raising that awesome Errol Otis image of the undead kobold coming out of the fungi with mushrooms growing out of its eyeballs.
Yes, and I have seen people basically hand wave the inexplicable vampire picture, because there are no vampires at all in A4, is that was the hallucinogenic spores. It convinced those two adventurers that there was a vampire attacking. That's why we get that illustration on the back. So yeah, that's
let's get back into trivia, because it's so much fun.
let's get back into trivia. Okay, so here's first of all, I want to, because Jack Photon had a really interesting suggestion here about your decks, Paul, and I'm going to put this up on screen. Perhaps stick the missing ship sections still attached, but ethereal or astrally shifted due to the initial plane rupture and infested with mutated ethereal or astral baddies instead of normal mutants.
Right. Well,
that's
when I ran, I mean, because when I ran my Star Frontiers version of this, I did it to recreate everything. So when the ship lands on Earth, that's how things turned out, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a generation ship, and I explained how they had teams, and each team had groups, and they developed their skills, and people would go up in rank, and they'd get promoted, and they would also, they stopped at 5 planets. The first planet they stopped at was Verdana, which is, and I used the classic Lucas George Lucas, the entire planet is a jungle planet. The entire planet is an ice planet.
Sure.
Because people don't care about biomes when they're watching a space opera.
Sure.
So the first planet is Verdana, and it's a jungle planet. And they capture several creatures for their menagerie or their zoo, right? Mm-hmm. So they collect the baboonoids. Those are alien creatures. the muck dwellers, the squealer, the web birds, all the different crazy plants, the low grass, the strangle vines, the purple blossoms, the tri-flower frond, the russet mold, before it is irradiated and becomes dangerous, and then the leechoids. And then the next planet, and so the next planet they go to is Cassi, which is a gravity planet. It's like Mercury. It has extreme shifts in gravity.
Okay.
And in that they find and it's like a metal planet with mercury lakes. And one side is the temperature of the sun, and the other side is 160 kelvins below zero. Right? And so so they pick up the Arum Vorax there, the Boulette or the Boulay there, the Horrid Plant, and the Umber Hulk, because all of these things are indicated as being captured and being brought aboard the spaceship. So the next place is they find an alien ship on a planet, and on that alien ship they find an intellect devourer, a doppelganger, a cerebral parasite, and a brain mole. Those are the samples they take. On Quag, the swamp planet, they find gas bats, frogamoth, shambling mounds, living mangrove, which is something that is in there, leechoids, and vampire thornvine. And then finally, they go to an ocean planet where they get the eye of the deep, brilliant, and then the scintillating phosphorescent fish. And so what I did was I took all of the creatures that are in the Menagerie and in the Rookery and in the Botanical Garden that were clearly specimens grabbed by the ship before it crashed on Earth. And then all of those things get loose onto Earth and change Earth. Like use the classic Jeff D illustration of the land shark being thrown out the...
Yes, I love that. They're just pitching it. Just... Right.
And there's no natural predators for land sharks. And I'm sure they move into the Duchy of Geoff, as I call it. I know you want to call it Jeff.
I do. Not only once, I do.
Players always laughed when I say the Duchy of Jeff. So anyways, there's no natural predators, and there's lots of yummy halflings to eat all around.
So what about this before we dive into some encounter sections? Because I want to look at some iconic ones, because we're not just, hey, would you do this in your campaign? But I will ask you one more, and I gotta share this because this is too fun. That is the the robots are just like, nope. Out you go.
So great.
So the last
that would have been the action figure. A cute little Boulay like that would have been the action figure.
Yes.
Dave Sutherland designed a set of prototype plushies. Did the artwork for him, and they had a set of plushies, which included the owl bear, and you see them now, but in 1980 they were developing a set of plushies based on the iconic D&D monsters, but they only made it to the prototype stage.
Oh,
Dave Sutherland had a great selection of photos of them, the prototypes.
Man,
see if I can find those.
That would be awesome. So before we get back into the meat of this, because I know our audience here is keen to look at some of the iconic encounters in here. In your campaign, do you ever, even if it's not something you said to your players, do you ever hold open the possibility that this ship can be moved?
Well, of course, if we're talking encounters, and I mean, obviously everything we're talking about is filled with massive amounts of spoilers, but there's the lounge room where somebody pushes a button and the whole area starts rumbling. And then after it stops rumbling, the wall slides aside and there's an image of outer space.
Yes.
And so the players in my game were like, crap. now what do we do? And so there was a lot of discussions about teleporting off of the ship and that sort of thing. Oh, and that's one other thing, Bill, is when I ran this, I had the shields working on the ship. And so that the hull was shielded, and like the magic user had an astral chest with his spell book in it, he couldn't get it because it was in another dimension and the shield cut off his access to it. And so I think, what was the other thing that I did? I think that the clerics couldn't reach their gods from inside the ship either.
Wow.
So they only got second level spells. But as soon as the front door opened, the door opens on a timed schedule. Mm-hmm. When the front door opens, then they could go out and get their stuff. But while the door was shut, they were stuck on the ship. I think it's for 24 hours.
So that's that's pretty harsh, dude. That is pretty harsh. Cut off from God by deflector shields.
That's right. I think the James T. Kirk, what does God need with a
I was just thinking that. What does God need with a spaceship?
He doesn't have deflector shields.
He doesn't have deflector shields. Exactly. We can get the dungeon minister's input on that there in the audience. Maybe he can he can share. Could mankind create a deflector shield so strong God couldn't get through it?
Does God's grace go through Star Trek's deflector shields?
Yes.
Can it pass?
So
anyways, I've developed those missing deck levels, and I don't want to spoil it for my players.
Okay.
But I think there's a possibility that a mountain could find a new location somewhere. How did this mountain get here? Well, let me tell you. It fell from the skies. And then God set this down right here in the middle of the plain of Greyhawk.
Now, do you know if maybe there's a little bit of influence from Paul Anderson's The High Crusade in this also?
Oh, probably. I mean, the sort of generation ship,
Mm-hmm.
The colony ship, the generation ship, that was a real popular theme. But I am 100% certain. I think Gary said that Jim got his idea for the Starship Warden from a sci-fi novel by Brian Aldiss. And then I went and did research to find out what it was. And then I read nonstop and I said, this is it. It's got wheelie sleds and lasers and robots, and it's got Vegapygmies. And I mean, it had everything.
Well, not to forget The Star Lost, a Canadian TV sci-fi show starring Keir Dullea and Robert Heinlein's Universe.
Well, what's the one? It's shameful of me. What's the British one with the hologram and the guy who's an evolved cat and
Red Dwarf.
Yeah, so Red Dwarf. That's kind of a people being on a ship for so long that only the hologram survives, or the ship's cat has mutated into a human being and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That is, and the way now I binged the first two seasons. I went to Seattle for a month and was snowed in for a few days when I got there with my friend, and he had taped them all from PBS. This was back in '94, and we binged the first two seasons or first three seasons of Red Dwarf. And every step I was like, this could be Metamorphosis Alpha.
Absolutely.
I mean, because they kept Dave Lister, the last human in the universe, because this is 4 million years in the future.
Yeah.
Dave Lister was a complete slacker. He was a total bum. He was the absolute Gen X space crewman of the future. He didn't know anything about the ship that he was serving on. So when he had a little sports car he drove around and would occasionally find decks where it's just like, I don't know what this stuff is. I don't know what this does.
Yeah. And so it's that whole, this culture has lived beyond its understanding of the technology. And that technology is now an ancient science. I mean, the veggie pygmies are using pieces of plate glass that they've napped into spearheads and and plastisteel poles to lash their spear points onto. I mean, they're primitive creatures, but at one point they were humans, or they sprouted up from humans in any case. So
yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some other encounters. What do you want to talk
Let's talk about some other encounters, and I'm gonna bring the text up here. So we've poked around a lot on the first deck, at least a little bit, and sort of apprehended the scope of the tragedy, as it were, with some random encounter areas. I think it's dawning on our party as they walk through this place that whatever this is, some thing terrible has befallen the inhabitants of this bizarre metal dungeon. But we're getting to some encounter areas. For example, Area 4 here, motionless female form. This is a seemingly unconscious but beautiful human female, but in reality, it is a berserk malfunctioning android with all the appropriate stats. It will spring up and attack twice with a pistol. Thereafter, it will use the bar if opponents are in range, or the pistol otherwise. The paralysis weapon has a full power disc. So she will beat you unconscious and then stun you and then presumably kill you with 1 to 8 points of damage per punch. We have Displacer Beast. Paul, Displacer Beast, alien or native?
Alien.
Alien, of course.
No, Displacer Beast. No, Displacer Beast, not alien, got trapped inside and I called them dimensional shields, is what I called them. that it blocks certain things. For example, like God. Prayers. It blocks prayers, but they don't operate all the time. They operate in pulses. And that's how the radiation gets in, and that's how some creatures get trapped inside. Some creatures that can travel on the phase spiders. They're an example of a creature who, when they're out of phase, can get trapped in the shields. But once the shields go up, they have to get the timing right to get back out again. Right.
And that's another...
Displacer beasts fall into that trapped creature, not collected alien fauna.
The Displacer Beasts are another golden era of science fiction. Well, I guess at this point we could call it diamond era of science fiction. From
was it Merit Story?
Van Vogt, Voyage of the Space Beagle.
They were called
Coral. Yes.
Coral. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then we have phase spiders, of course, as you say, moving in and out of sync with reality, gets them stuck on the ship. And the ship's commander's quarters. There's old Jim Kirk. And no, it's not really Jim Kirk, guys. Don't
know what his name was in my campaign?
Hit us.
Gil Crit was his name.
Gil Crit. I love it.
Because we had so many people on the ship, I had to give them all names. Like every single NPC had to have a name, because this wasn't D&D. You couldn't just have another goblin. Everybody had to have a name. So I gave everybody 2-syllable names. Nim Kern was his wife. Gil Crit was the commander, and just on and on like that. Everybody had a 2-syllable name on the ship. So yeah, the overall captain or commander, his name was Gil Crit, and he was played by my friend Martin, who passed away, and he played him totally as Buzz Lightyear.
Nice.
This is Gil Crit, captain's log, and he'd just go all out on it. So.
And then, of course, we have the now you bitching about treasure. Area D, everybody, I want you to stand up and point at your monitors and accuse Paul of being a liar in the most scandalous way possible. Area D, the commander's wife. What do we see there, class? What do we see? 2,750, 350 gold piece jewelry, 6 bracelets, 1,600, 3 necklaces with aquamarines, 500, jewelry value 4,000 gold.
A lot of fat good it'll do you after you've disintegrated your buddy by accidentally pointing the screen of the blaster rifle in the wrong direction and his head is gone. And now you get a bigger share of treasure.
Exactly. We have the security chief's quarters there. You were talking to us about those.
By the way,
yes,
this is where a mutiny occurred in my Star Frontiers version of this game. And you'll notice that one of the commander's bottles is spiked with a truth serum.
Yes, personal lounging and dining area. A bottle of liquor on the buffet is treated with a drug to cause persons imbibing it to tell the absolute truth for 3 rounds.
Right. So when the plague started taking people over, one of the guys was secretly going to take over the ship because of his madness. And the commander spiked that in order to trick him into telling him what his plans were for the mutiny. And then the mutiny was brutally put down right at the dining room table in the commander's office.
Oh my gosh. Are you sure this isn't like a mirror universe Star Trek ship you were running? Did everybody have goatees?
Everybody was going insane because of the plague. So
we have the chief's personal office and study, master bedroom, another skeleton sprawled on the floor near the bed, a metal box with several buttons, a dial, and a grill. It is voice command for police robots, but the voice command is key to the chief, so it is useless.
Bill has their 16th level character, cleric, resurrect the captain.
Exactly so. These poor people. Will o' the Wisps, which I go with magical.
Trapped creature.
Shriekers and fungi. Veg pygmies, lots of those. Let's see. More veg pygmies. Remember, folks, you don't make friends with salad.
Area 13 are the radiation areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at the level 1 map, you can see all the radiation areas are along the hull. They're all the 13s that are around the edges of the hull.
Let's see. And there they are, yes.
Since we were talking about that radiation earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Radiation seems pretty dire in this game.
It does. You know, speaking of dire things, I was showing our audience last night. When I was a kid and I first saw this module there in Zares over in Pine Hills, Florida, I remember looking at
at Youngtown.
the flow charts for figuring out tech stuff blew my mind. I was like, wow, that is a lot. And then I said, so anybody who's never seen Gamma World, look at that and tell me. Tell me if you're now still a little confuzzled and you think that's a big path to fall through, because the stuff in Gamma World will just straight kill you. We're going to figure out how to use this main building computer. What do you mean I died by using the main building computer? You died by using it. You rolled a bunch of 10s. That's how it happened.
Okay, so Bill.
Yes.
Radiation says that it can be cured by anti-radiation serum. It does not say neutralized poison will save you. What do you think?
I mean, radiation
just poison, it's doing something else. It's not just poison, right? You can't just say, oh, neutralize poison. You've got to counter the radioactivity. The energy.
I mean, radiation is radiation, and in that respect, you're right. I mean, sure, something like Wish or Alter Reality, but at that
How
point,
high level are your characters, Bill? You keep
no,
ripping
not
out
Mike.
these
I'm
7th
just
from 8th
saying.
and 9th
I'm
level
just
spells.
hypothetically.
My character group was 8th level when they went through this thing.
I get it. You're
Let's
running
reincarnate the captain and fly this thing off.
You're running Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Everybody gets a board with a rusty nail through it, Paul. I get it. They can fight over
level characters in the game.
A bent brass piece, But anyway.
No, I use iron drabs only.
Yeah, of course. A brass piece, maybe if you reach 5th level. And then you have the art room.
Did you ever read those Han Solo books back in the day?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
The one where he chases for the Imperial Treasury, and he goes through the entire galaxy and finally gets it, and it's just some worthless token that's not worth it. There's millions and millions and millions of them, but it's all completely worthless because it's old tokens. It's not gold or anything valuable.
It was
credits that are no longer worth anything.
It was ingots of curium metal.
Oh yeah,
which was used on starship hulls before deflector shields were perfected, and is now useless because deflector shields. And it was MITAG crystals used for subspace radios, which again is completely outdated tech. Everybody was after the treasure vaults of Zim the Despot.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And Zim's treasure was enough war material to rebuild his empire once he was able to escape Republic authorities. But of course, he was killed in the Third Battle of Vontar. Yes, I do know a little bit too much about Star Wars. Why do you ask?
I essentially did that same plot, but it ended up being 1 million iron drabs.
So 20 gold pieces.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was worth it in itself in weight as iron. So valueless.
Oh my God!
And the funny part was it was all rusted into a solid. Oh man, my players were really mad at me, but they were only 3rd level, so who's going to give them 1 million of anything, except for me as a rusted lump of iron.
So we have the art workroom, which I think was a missed opportunity. I think we should have gotten an illustration plate for the art workroom done by one artist, but a picture on the easel done by another artist. That's past TSR. You should have done that.
I had in the next module I'm releasing for Legends of Role Playing, I had Errol Otis do a Picasso.
I promise not to share it to anyone. You can send me an NDA to sign. I have to see that.
In the art room. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I have got to see an Errol Otis Picasso. But anyway, so we get a little bit more lovely art, and then this Jeff D. Intellect Devourer, which they started out in AD&D as basically just a black sphere with 4 iron legs, which is kind of scary, and now they look like walking brains, which is creepy, but to me not as scary as just the black sphere with the lion legs.
What are you talking about?
The Intellect Devourer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a sphere, dead black, on 4 lion feet in Eldritch Wizardry, and by the time we get over here to Expedition to the Barrier Peaks,
defined calf muscles.
Yes, the brain did not skip leg day, boys and girls, and neither should you. But yeah,
as far as his legs are, anyways.
It is ripped. But as scary as they are, if you're not psionic, it's not a big deal. It can claw you. It can attack you as effectively as 4 rats can. You're just going to shove it away.
Yeah, when my 9th, 10th, 11th level party hit this back in 1982, it basically cornered one of our fighters, and nobody could hit it or hurt it, and everybody ended up running away, and it just raked and disemboweled and shredded this poor fighter into bits. And we came back with we thought it could only be hurt by tech weapons. So we came back with all sorts of tech weapons. That didn't work either. That's terrible.
No. But so yes, level 2. Let's get some.
This is a tween deck. You should make an introduction about it. The tween.
Okay. So crosshatch areas, there are potential danger areas. Generally, all wiring and piping is protected by metal, as are all machines. Certain generators and transformers can cause troubles. If characters insist on striking, poking, prodding, or otherwise attacking these areas with metal instruments, there's a 10% chance per round that the individual will electrocute and permanently kill himself or herself. If not killed, there's a 10% chance that a minor explosion will be caused. An area 10 feet distance from the affected generator, transformer, whatever, will be subject to a blast of 5 to 30 hit points of damage. Although save versus magic will reduce it by 50%. Everybody's stunned for a d6 rounds, regardless of the saving throw. This is to the edge of the blast may jump out of the blast by adding their armor class to the roll of 1d6 and comparing it to a roll of 3d6 by the DM. If the character has higher
intellect devour, we threw the intellect devour with a telekinesis spell into one of those areas.
Now there you go. I love it. I love that is thinking outside the box. You know, I used to do construction with my old man, and I was very surprised to see this. But there was a 440 junction box on the side of a building that was being built, and there was a sticker on it that said, "Warning: this will kill you, and it will hurt the whole time you're dying."
I've seen that sticker.
Yeah, I mean,
so Bill, look at the Jeff D illustration.
I'm sorry, which illustration?
Do you notice what's happening with the magic user's torch in the far distance?
Are we talking here? This one?
Bottom page 9. Yeah. So you see how his torch. You see how his torch is hitting the ceiling?
Yes. Oh God.
If you go to the cross section of the ship on the second to last page of this booklet, it's only 5 foot tall in there. So not only are you fighting this intellect devourer that you can't hurt with anything, the ceiling is only about 5 foot high. So if you cast a fireball, as my party did, it spreads out a lot. You want to know how much? 66 squares on the map.
66 squares. And
66 squares. So we got burned badly.
Now, did your DM check each square to see if they'd hit a power transformer or something too?
No, he didn't do that, but he did make sure that we were all engulfed in it.
Oops, sorry about that. That is
that is directly from those tween decks or in between decks or service decks. That's directly from Nonstop, again, the Brian Aldiss novel. And all of the beings living on the ship, occasionally there were two kinds of alien creatures or godlike creatures that invaded their primitive world. One were called the Giants, and the other were called, I think, the Others, or Other Beings. And what the Giants actually were is the ship had come back to Earth and parked, but Earth scientists found out it was full of these degenerate subhumans that were only 4 foot tall, 3 or 4 foot tall, vegapygmies, and not necessarily full humans anymore. And so they decided, we can't bring them to Earth. Let's just preserve the ship, and we'll just maintain the ship and repair it as needed to keep it working. And then they can just live on it. So the giants were just normal-sized human beings, technicians that were there to fix the breaker panel and keep life support going for these creatures. And then the other beings were very short human beings that had become scientists in order to study the cultures on the ship. So they were anthropologists. So
we
anyways,
represent the anthropologists.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the tween decks are very important for this part of this story, because that's how the giants or the other beings, that's how they moved and suddenly appeared in areas and then disappeared.
Neat. That is very interesting.
Is completely insane. It's brilliant.
So we have level 3. We have the upper walkway and lounge area. We have wandering monsters. We've seen the police robot and the worker robot. When the party steps onto the walkway, display illustration 20. Let's go look at illustration 20 for our audience here. Let me scroll this up. I'm sure the gears in Paul's head are whirling. Area 20, what's that going to look like? Okay, so there we see it. We have this view down. And isn't that idyllic? Isn't that inviting?
Yeah,
valued viewers,
the players were thinking, holy crap.
Just walk down in there.
Dangerous stuff down there.
Not at all. Not at all. These crewmen must have used this for a place of relaxation and rest, and surely nothing bad can happen down in there.
Look at that island in the center. Wouldn't you want to take your family there on a picnic, Bill? I mean,
absolutely.
I can see myself in a seersucker suit with a straw slider, rowing my woman with a parasol in her gown across, and having a lovely picnic.
Maybe you got a little banjo going, play a little Dixieland.
When you get the picnic blanket.
Absolutely, it's maybe fun.
The croquet mallets brought with us, a little game of croquet around the island.
And the important thing here is, ladies and gentlemen, it's safe. This is an image that says safety. This mounted thing here, that's obviously a viewfinder. You're just going to zoom in and look at the begonias and the water lilies that are clearly going to be around the island. Everything down there, perfectly safe. That's what I said.
An awesome Jim Rosloff painting.
Yes.
Or Jim Rosloff illustration, I should say.
It's funny, and I don't want to be Captain Bring Down. Jim and I had always intended to have a sit down, to have a gab with one another, and it was one of those things that we just meant to come back to, and it didn't work out, and that breaks my heart, because
the day you want to do a tribute show to Jim Rosloff, I am on board.
Then get your file of facts out and start looking for dates on your calendar, because, and I've said this before, my introduction to Dungeons and Dragons was through Jim Rosloff. That desolate landscape the adventurers are fighting desperately on in the cover of Keep on the Borderlands, and you open up that gatefold, and there's the 3 adventurers going after the owl bear. That will always be what an owl bear looks like to me. These again weird woodsy owl looking ones that they do nowadays, I'm just like, with they got jazz hands going. Get out of here with that.
Jazz hands.
Get out of here with that.
I don't like them when they're on all fours. That freaks me out. They got to be upright.
Yeah, exactly. They got to be upright. And I like the fact that, and I introduced this on a Tuesday live stream game. An owl bear came, and I might have some of my players listening, and so this is a little bit of a spoiler, but an owl bear came to their encampment and was beating on the stable, and they came out and they fought it, and they injured it badly, and they drove it off. Nobody spoke owl bear. Nobody had speak with animals, anything like that memorized. Owl bears are described as always being hungry and ill-tempered, but they have an intelligence. In my mind, this owl bear was basically bitching about these people's houses being over a property line. Just this big Midwestern owl bear named Denny, who wants to know who the hell gave him a variance to build over the property line. He wanted to have
how long I've lived here.
Exactly.
3 years
Anyway.
since I was cooked up in a wizard's potion bottle.
So we're looking down into the garden there. The Ropers' territory. Now, it's easy to enter this. All you have to do is come knock on their door.
Everything down there is alien, Bill.
Everything down there is alien.
Everything down there is alien.
But we have so much cool stuff down there too. Cocktail lounge, bar, dancing, nightclub, and it says the area is unremarkable. Not to me.
That sounds great.
It is. I mean, Gary was. I tell you what. When I was working on Yigsburg stuff, and I started basically building a buttery and a wine cellar and stuff, Gary was right there next to me, virtually speaking, making sure I got all that stuff right. So you don't hand wave your bars. So we have strangle vines. Let's check out illustration 21 in that area.
Now, that's another one by Jim Rosloff. Just an absolute master economy of lines for depicting something. And man, he could just knock it out. He was very good at doing Celtic knotwork. As a matter of fact, the dragon lance symbol with that Celtic knotwork, Larry Elmore was trying to work out the knotwork for it, and Jim was so good at it. He went to Jim, and Jim just knocked out the Celtic knotwork, and then
wow,
Larry painted the rest of it.
Wow, that is great.
So you can see that because he was a hippie, and he kind of liked to. When he was a hippie, he did a lot of publishing and a lot of illustrating, and he liked using sort of woodcut images because he was printing like hippie newspapers, like the Chicago Seed, and concert posters and stuff like that. So when you see Jim's stuff like this, you kind of start to see that sort of hippie sort of, drawing on your weed box with a ballpoint pen and with just a few strokes masterfully showing, some intense plant.
Oh, definitely. You can absolutely pick up on that. And he has a picture in Deities and Demigods. I think it's Thor putting the smackdown on the head of a dragon. It's it's a huge illustration. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I not work on that. Amazing.
Yeah. It's just it is such a feast for the eyes. Oh, hey, here's a question. Jack says, the druid could not name one plant and might question if they are plants. There you go. Druid down in the garden section going, I have no idea what these are.
We have an ongoing bit where our druid casts speak with plant, and the plants always start off with, "Hey, how's it going? I'm a plant." No matter what, every plant, the party just waits for it. "Hey, how's it going? I'm a plant."
My buddy, who I think you may have actually met at GaryCon, Rusty Schaefer, is absolutely 100% of the school of thought that the most useless spell ever created was locate plant. It has a 3-foot radius. There it is.
If you're looking for a 4-leaf clover, I suppose it's a good.
That's literally all it's good for. And I mean, a nasty DM could say, "No, you can't find a specific clover. You can find a patch of clover, but I don't need a spell slot for that. I can just look down and see a patch of clover." All right, so let's let us continue walking lightly. 8 Weeks says, "I have that spell. It's called eyes." All right, let's walk very carefully, and I think we already got a look at the vampire thorn vines. Oops, maps.
Well,
right there next to it.
The next entry is, I mean, all these plants are classic Metamorphosis Alpha Gamma World sort of things. But if you've ever played on Jim's Starship Warden, any plant will kill you.
Yeah.
No,
no,
that's incorrect. Every plant will kill you.
Every plant. Yeah. I mean,
if you just look at it and say, "Oh, that's pretty," you're fine. But if you walk towards them, if you try to touch them, if you cast a spell against them, invariably you'll be irradiated and full of spores and dead.
Yeah, my party is terrified of what is it, the Zeeth? They can just teleport you full of seeds. Dining servo robot. I don't think we have an illustration of that.
For everybody who goes to Disney World, you have to read this section, Bill.
Okay, dining servo robot. Most of these robots have been scrapped, but this one still functions, or rather malfunctions. It will immediately attempt to seat any persons entering the dimly lit lounge area and then begin serving them a heaping dish of food. The substance in the dishes will be a decaying mush covered with nauseous blue-green mold. If any creature so much as tastes a drop of it, it will instantly the next round as a blue-green spores attack the brain.
Insanity, and then
attack the brain. It lasts for 1 to 4 turns, and the person then dies. The effects are curable with either neutralized poison or a disease curative solution or spell. Purify food and drink will have no effect. If the party refuses to eat, the servo will attempt to force feed the closest person, pursuing the party if they attempt to flee, although the servo will not leave the level. The servo robot gives us stats.
Here you have the classic Gary, and people say, "Hey, there's no saving throw. You should get a saving throw versus poison if you eat this stuff." And Gary's saying the saving throw is the player going, should I consume this disgusting mush just because I think it would be funny? Dead. That's your saving throw, is deciding to not do that. You don't even have to roll the dice. You just have to say, "I will not do that."
I think from some of these, I mean, a module like this, stuff like this is just so, nobody who's a nerd cannot have heard of this, encountered this. And video game programmers are, of course, nerds. There's a diner in Fallout 4 that if you go in and interact with the robots, they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, we've got a table available," and they lock the door behind you. But if you pick up any of the food items, any of the glasses, anything, if you pick them up and add them to your inventory, which is, how you consume stuff in the Fallout games, they go berserk and attack you for stealing stuff without paying for it. So a little touch of this and that, I think. And then we've got the webbirds, which are some of the most, with russet mold and veg pygmies and all the other weirdness. Just me, Bill Sylvie, the webbirds are the most creatures.
The little appendage coming out of the middle of their chest.
Where
they insert grubs into your body.
Yeah. Little body horror there.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball.
Yes.
The rat birds in there.
Yeah.
When I saw those rat birds on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, I thought, web birds right there.
Yeah.
The exact thing. Winged rats.
Yeah, we have a lovely Dave LaForce webbird here, which now you might have, not you, Paul, I'm sure you have every printing of this under the sun, but you might have out there in internet land a copy of this module that has a different illustration where this webbird is by Errol, I think.
Yes.
There were some printing variations where a few of the art plates were swapped around by different artists. Not huge differences, but Tonka says, please tell me there's a Karen bot that constantly demands to see the manager there too. There is now. There is now. There's a female humanoid android walking around demanding to speak to a manager with a manic pixie shag mushroom haircut. Let's see.
I'm getting a real Wall-E vibe of malfunctioning robot lab.
Yeah.
Oh, you look gorgeous.
Now
we get to the good part. Cargo hold with ceiling hole, Bill.
Cargo hold with ceiling hole. Cargo hold with ceiling hole, doo-dah, doo-dah. See the key to level 2 for details of the Intellect Devourer, which will be here on a percentile dice roll 140. Check each turn. The hold has a number of stasis cages, now empty. There are bones strewn about, and under a human skeleton are an orange card and a blaster rifle. And, I think it's past time we should take a look at some of the weapons, because we've been talking about how some of them don't look like weapons despite being described as a rifle. After no less than 2 turns of careful searching, the party will discover a wrapped crate, a transparent stasis cage with a black dial, which has a 4 coatl in it.
Oh, yeah. Nothing like 4 super powerful godlike serpent creatures with magical powers and psionics.
Yes.
That is no that's no schlub of an encounter right there.
Indeed. But let us see here. Let me see. Is it in this booklet?
It's not the most powerful good psionic godlike creature in the adventure either.
No, it's not. There are a couple of Shedu that are trapped, isn't?
No kidding. Speaking of godlike, superpowered, psionic, magic using, cleric using creatures, what are these dudes doing on the ship? Trapped.
Okay, so this is something, and this is what Paul and I are talking about with weapons that don't look like any friggin' thing. So weapons data. Now, you have illustrations to show the players. This is what I'm talking about. This BFG looking thing that this guy has,
But Bill, look at the other thing. I think that this current generation might be more vulnerable to blowing their head off with the other version. Because of iPhones and iPads. They're just like, okay, well, I touched the screen. Doot, 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 doot.
And a real jerk of a DM could break out their mobile phone and say, the top part looks like this. They hold it horizontally.
I swipe left. Your hand is gone.
Yeah.
Shit.
Because this thing, and this is described as a rifle. This backpack looking dealio. But we'll look at what we show the players here in a second.
And Bill, they design these things to induce the players into making bad decisions based on their preconceived notions of how technology should work.
Yes.
Which is brilliant, because it had to be a combination between the artist and Gary to really obfuscate not just the function, but the method for using the device, and just inviting them with pointing the deadly part towards their face. Sort of. Yeah.
What is it that there's a stun gun that basically looks like an I Dream of Genie bottle? So you would think that, like, as it tapers down towards the end, I point
the long end, just like a pistol, that has to be the dangerous end, right?
No, it's the stubby fat bottom end that's the dangerous end. Right. But let's look at the illustration. Yeah, I'm going to have a nap on the deck for a little while. So let's see. Let's jump all the way down to illustration 53, and you can see what we mean here. Yeah, you find that. Your DM shows you that. Now, you can claim to be, I'm not going to metagame at all, but even in the 1970s, you're thinking in the back of your head, this is some kind of communication device.
Or binoculars.
Or binoculars, some kind of viewfinder. And then you've got the folded up rifle, this backpack looking thing. What does that even do? But here we go. Here's a laser pistol. It's not just some convenient spade grip. How is that supposed to work? And then there's a laser rifle that's got the AR goggles built onto it. I mean, they have a lot of fun with this. The Needler pistol.
Classic right there.
The Needler pistol. Where does the ouch come out on that?
If you say to somebody, this is a gun, which way do you point it? They're going to be full of needles.
Yes. Salient to this, Tonka Todd asked, could I read some box text that describes a weapon? I absolutely will. But there's the stunner. This is like a sonic stunner. Look at that and tell me you wouldn't think that the pointy end goes towards the bad guys. It's the fat end. It's this end.
And if this end towards enemy.
Yeah. So yeah, I will. I'll see if I can find some text that describes your first encounter with a gadget like this. Paul, if you know, like off the top of your head, where something like this.
Here's the paralysis pistol. You ready?
Yes,
this
hit us.
Looks like a glass bottle or retort with a pimpled or warty surface and black handle on one side. Inside the bottle may be seen threads, wires, globes, and a rod. The broad end of the bottle has a rounded metal plate with several brass prongs sticking out of it. The narrow end is capped with a silver sheath and golden ball. The black handle has a round panel larger than a coin with a rivet in the center. Again,
there you go, Tonka. I mean, that is exactly what you get told by the dungeon master, and you get shown that right there. Note the trigger is on the side.
Yeah,
So
Gary always describes plastic as a horn-like material.
Yeah.
So you don't even know it's plastic.
Yeah. And we have some power armor there.
Nice. That's a great Errol Otis drawing right there.
It is.
I think that's Otis, isn't it?
This one, I'm almost certain that's it. Yeah, the shading and everything. Let me see. Let's zoom in on that. Zoom and enhance. We have the technology. Let me scroll down a little bit.
I don't know. Maybe it's Jeff D. The mystery. What's it going to be? We should have put money on it, Bill.
We should have.
Oh,
Otis it is. Errol Otis. I bought Space Marine, which has nothing to do with Games Workshop. I had a copy of Space Marine for a little while from FGU. And I bought it on the presumption that, hey, because it has art by Jeff D. and it has art by Dave Sutherland. And I was like, this will be cool. Maybe I'll get a good game, but there'll be some Jeff D. and some Dave. There's like 3 illustrations in the book by Dave Sutherland that are literally that wide and that high. And the cover, which is very snazzy, by Jeff D. So, there's no great trove of D&D artists doing sci-fi stuff there.
Well, let's look at 61.
61 or 51?
61, because these these are all dangerous things that look safe. This is a safe thing that looks dangerous.
So what do we have here, Paul?
That is a translator. Of course it's a translator. No one would. So the first time an android comes up to them and points a translator at them, the party is going to think he's going to shoot us.
And you can pity the encounter teams that went down on planets before everything went pear-shaped on the ship.
Here, let's translate. If you tried to translate that to somebody in the Wild West, you'd be shot down.
I am reminded of the very first episode of the TV show Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Some alien overlord is arming primitive people with ancient weapons he unearthed, and they're crates of rifles. And Buck pulls out an M16 and locks and loads it and points it at the guy's guards, and he says, "You fools, don't be afraid. That's some ancient signaling device." So Buck just burns through half a clip in the ceiling over their heads and looks at him and says, "Get the message?" So I think I think this could probably have caused a lot more problems than it might have, than it might should have. What is this doodad? I forget what this doodad is here. 62.
Spotlight.
Spotlight. Okay. And it looks at this point, depending on how many characters you've accidentally killed with blasters, when you see that black screen, your party should just be breaking out blunt weapons and smashing this to pieces.
Is this some sort of artillery piece?
Yeah, exactly. The little one erased Bob's head. The big one melted Mary the cleric. This one, we're just going to smash it with hammers. Robert Phillips says, "You stick the pointy part of the translator in your ear and pull the trigger." Of course. Oh, God.
And then on the very next page is the fire extinguisher, which looks like Buck Rogers laser gun. That's on page 27. I don't think they have a drawing of it in the book, in the illustration book, but it's on page 27 of the other thing. I mean, it's a fire extinguisher, and it looks like a plasma cannon.
Oh, is that? Let me see.
27. Page 27.
Yeah, so there's the laser rifle in use with the AR goggles for sighting. And I tried. I had like a cardboard tube. Whoever was in charge of the designing this thing, really, I hope they died in the plague, because that walking around
you're
doing
going to get carpal tunnel if you fire that enough.
You're going to destroy your arm doing that. That's like going to kill your wrist. Maybe that's part of the point. Maybe that's part of it. Weapons are hard to use in the future. There's the hand pump spray. There we are. The blaster rifle fire extinguisher. Is that the one? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, the Dave LaForce, and that is a fire.
That looks a little bit like Spock right there.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. To operate the fire,
he's got the classic Star Trek pointy sideburns. So,
if I could arch an eyebrow, I would do it. And then one of my favorites from the ship's rations. This is where we need now. Paul, are you familiar with Steve MRE 1989?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. I should have reached out to him for a collab on this. Let's get this out on a tray. Nice. Because we have.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Are you familiar with Mignol Chorts?
You got me.
Mignol Chorts and Zgwarts. Zgwarts is beer on the starship Znutar. Tom Wam's Awful Green Things from Outer Space.
Ah.
The ship is named Znutar, and the crew drinks Zgwarts, which is a beer, but they eat Mignol Chorts, which I think are like Twinkies. They're kind of like food that lasts forever. And so in Gamma World, you can find Mignol Chorts and Zgwarts, cans of Zgwarts around. And so when my players played through this, I had them find cans of Zgwarts and Mignol Chorts.
Well, what is on the menu here is we have now this is actually stuff you can get now. FRHs, the heating packages for packets of soup and spaghetti and so on. That's actually a technology we have now, but probably not when this was being written. But you can heat or chill the food in the container by pulling a tab. And we have possible contents of a ration pack are protein stews, sero porridges, nutrient drinks, surrogate steaks, vegetable substitutes, and Vita bars. Boy, how far down the ladder?
They just outlawed surrogate states in the Supreme Court, didn't they?
I think so.
Not to bring politics into it.
Gonna get us demonetized, Paul. You better get over that Patreon because you may have just cost me. No, seriously. So you can get MREs on the ship. I think there are some cases where you find MREs around the ship that are not quite so fresh and will absolutely kill you if you eat them, which one could say, if you've served in the military, that is the exact state of them when they're issued to troops. So Luther has got a couple of complaints he would like to levy. First is a little bit serious because, this is a game to be taken seriously, very highbrow stuff here. None of the tech look consistent, like it assembled from various alien races or something. A fair criticism, I think. And then this one, freaking Pop-Tarts and Capri Sun. This is not an advanced civilization. So Pop-Tarts, Capri Sun, Sero Podges, nutrient drinks. We won't say surrogate steaks because that's, vegetable substitutes. How far down the dietary pyramid do you have to fall for a company to pack vegetable substitutes? You've heard of Impossible Steaks? This is Impossible Vegetables.
No more powdered potatoes. It's vegetable substitute.
Exactly. And Vita bars, because my God, if the future doesn't have a granola bar in it.
What does the base Sero mean? Sero porridges.
The only thing I can think is that it's like supposed to be cereal.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
like a hot cereal.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if we had Steve MRE, we have him get this out on a tray for us. So yeah, we've got some other gadgets, and of course, after your party has experimented with and disintegrated themselves accidentally with a grenade or two, they're going to find wound healing canisters and immediately press the button and throw them. Seeing a trail of whitish spray come arcing out of them as they sail down the hall. So we have levels 2 and 3. There's a dead crewman, just in case you wanted to cast Resurrection.
Yeah, that's the crewman who. Is that the captain, or is that the crewman who killed the intellect devourer? It's the wrong weapon. We found a mistake, Bill.
We found a mistake. Yes.
He's supposed to have a blaster, not a laser.
And he's got a laser. File a complaint with Wizards of the Coast. This is their error to fix.
I'm contacting Diesel in the morning.
Good. Do so. I won't let this stand. God, the last thing I wanted was Wizards of the Coast to ever.
Nope. The very next line says it's the jumbled bones of the captain. So that's Gil
There's
Crit.
laser. Okay. All right.
So it is correct. The jumbled bones of the captain with his laser pistol. 4 charges left on the power disc.
And we have a wheelie sled, illustration 18.
Yeah, and now that wheelie sled is directly from Nonstop. They called them, I think, robotic trucks or something like that. But
Makes
they were
sense.
designed because remember how we looked at the tween decks and they're only 5 foot tall? You can't walk around in a place all day long if it's only 5 foot tall. So they would sit on these wheelie sleds and they would zoom around in the tween decks. And that's how they'd get around those vast spaces without breaking their neck.
Makes sense. Now, here's a question for you. Although you probably would have said so straight away. What is written here? Do you know if that's just artist license or if there's an actual hidden message there?
You know, is that a Jeff D piece?
That's a good question.
Jeff D and Bill Willingham were very famous for using known runes.
Yeah, some of those do look like known runes. And yes, there's a D down in the corner here, so I'm thinking that is Jeff D.
Remember, was it D who did the cover for Descent to the Depths of the Earth? And there's or maybe it was Willingham, maybe it was D, I don't know. But there's like Iron Man's helmet and Captain America's shield sticking out of the coffer. But then there's this kind of stone stela or stone tablet, and there's engravings in it. And if you read it, it says, ahead is no joy, no hope. There's an evil race. Give up all life, give up all hope. And then it's signed Giant. And essentially, it's the beginning to the descent into the depths of the earth. And so what Jeff D does is he creates this tablet, but then he uses Viking runes or Futhark runes to create what it says. And you can actually translate it. And it says that, beyond lies evil race, give up all light, hope, joy, signed Giant. And so I am guessing that he and Willingham both used runes. I wonder if we could translate it if we were, and
it would take a lot of legwork to do right here live, but I would absolutely.
I won't give it a whack. Have one of your noble viewers work on that one.
Okay, there you go. There's your homework.
Translate the runes on the wheelie sled.
Translate the runes on the wheelie sled. Good grief. IKEA in space. Yikes. Yes, Luther, that is just exactly so.
Ooh, I see that there are some common runes in there. I'm detecting patterns. Okay, I'm stopping. Move on to something else, Bill.
All right. Let's see. So we got some unfortunate souls, and I think we're looking at more tween decks area stuff here.
So this is where you find out that the intellect devourer took over the insane captain.
Okay.
And then goes about the ship releasing all of the other creatures. And the intellect devourer does that so it can eat all of the creatures that he releases.
Yeah, except the Coatl and the Shedu. It doesn't want
an intellect devourer knows exactly what those are, and it's not going to release those because it's the only thing that can kill it on the ship.
Yes. Or the Ithalid that's loose on the ship, the Mind Flayer.
Oh yeah. Oh, but he's saved best for last.
There, we've got an office. We've got the walking kettlebell, some panels and whatnot. Some unfortunate crewmen.
Computer.
Yeah.
If you want to drive the ship, that's where you drive the ship from, right there.
So advanced.
That is Chekhov on the left, And that is
left to right.
That is Sulu on the right, and that is Uhura resting in the corner.
Oh. See the glorious storage cubes. And once again, a black screen. At this point, your party may be destroying everyone they see.
And so that's the viewing thing that shows all 56 levels of the ship. And so there's 56 lines on there. Each of those is one level of the ship. And then the 3 dials are 100s, 10s, and 1s. So you can go to room 392 on level 32. Or you can go to room 112 on level 5 or whatever.
No, Luther is saying, "Oh, Commodore 64." Okay, no, this is more like MSI 8080.
It's a trash big, 80.
Yeah, big boxy computer with switches on the front. You load values into an accumulator and then press an execute button to get blinking lights. So as we continue, we have kitchens, and they're robot kitchens like those on level 1. The horrible Webbird. Oh yeah, we were up there already. Green slime, which again, alien or natural to Greyhawk and wound up in here. I leave that up.
Greyhawk wound up in here.
Magnifying viewers. If these binoculars are turned the proper way and adjusted, they bring objects 5 times closer.
Now, by this time, somebody's blown their friend's head off or their own head off. Who is going to stick their face in that thing?
Yeah, exactly. These are the ones that we saw overlooking. That was 24, I think. That thing. More runes, and then it's mounted on a convenient flex arm, and it overlooks the it overlooks down into the lovely pond area. The garden level.
What if it was part of like a shooting gallery where you could shoot things in the...
Exactly. Stuff that tries to fly up out. You just give it a little stun jolt and drop it right back down in there.
That's fun. That is an entertainment deck.
Well, we found the video game arcade straight away last night.
Yep.
And you got to let the players play some video games while they're in there. We have a rabbitoid. There's definitely a Jim Wardism creeping in there on level 4. So let's hop over there and take a look at that.
Oh, and a ratoid as well.
A ratoid. So
and a squirreloid. I think I saw a squirreloid running down the street the other day.
So we have a rabbitoid, and of course, everybody at this point, I mean, I think everybody should be familiar with the infamous wolf in sheep's clothing, which, John Carpenter, step aside. We got something equally horrible here. And let's see. That is a Rosaloff, and the one on bottom, the shading around the curvature of the roots makes me think that that's a Jim Rosaloff also, it's exactly the same. Yeah, the rabbit is nearly identical. And just in case you guys are out there prepping your best, John Cleese is the Enchanter Tim quote. That rabbit is a killer also. So yes. Is just a what?
It's just a bit of smut.
Yeah.
As in fungus or mushroom.
I got it. Okay. It took me a second
just
there.
A bit of smut is really what it would be.
So as we continue, and again, we could go through here, folks, and I could stop by every single encounter, and it would be September, probably, by the time I finish this module.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of really horrible plant things that can do terrible things to you.
Yes.
I think the Arum Vorax probably deserves a mention.
Yes, the Arum is it Arum Vorax? I always kind of crammed it together.
Arum as in gold, right?
Right,
Arum.
right. 31 or 32. Yeah, but there is the Arum Vorax. I want to show some of the color plates. We kind of glanced at the Froghemoth.
Mm-hmm.
There's the spaceship scene.
Which my players were convinced they were in space.
Which I think could be a noble goal, but that's for another time. Errol's gas bat.
Yeah, that thing's great. Exploding bats. Perfect. Can you imagine fireballing a flock of those coming at you?
Oh, God. Hey, take the normal bats and S4 out. Substitute them with those.
Kaboom.
There's the fence.
The color plates of the botanical areas, I think especially 32. 32 is just fantastic because it shows the Froghemoth kind of coming out of the water. It's it's almost as good as full color wormy art by Trampier, but I mean that's just great Errol Otis full color. I mean, they were paying Errol so little money that they could afford to have him make full color paintings for the interior.
Yeah.
We can't afford to have people make full color paintings for the exterior of modules.
Who was it that I tell this story and I can never remember, and you're going to tell me and I'm going to forget, but at least I'll know for tonight. Who was it that angrily told Gary, I could make more money as a manager at Sears and Racine than doing art for TSR? I feel like you told me who that was.
Well, I'm sure that was Mike Carr, but Dave Sutherland always liked to say he took a 2-cent pay cut to come work for TSR. He was selling shoes for the Minnetonka Moccasin Company, and he took a 2-cent pay cut to come be the art director at TSR. And I think Mike Carr was making a ton of money working at the Ground Round up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and he was a manager, and he had to take a pay cut too to come work at. And Gary said, "Well, but you'll get stock. we'll let you vest in the company, and you'll get stock." So,
kids, back in the 60s and 70s and 90s, you'll get stock was that era's. But think of the exposure you'll get. Response for low to no pay. So if you do art,
you get a lot more work that might be paid from this.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're a creator, if you're an artist, writer, whatever, and someone wants to hire you but not pay you, but they say, but think of the exposure you'll get. They're just saying what people used to say back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We'll give you stock options in our company. There's the Froghemoth itself up on the bridge.
Man, that thing is tough.
Yeah, I dropped a
Froghemoth. How my players defeated it? Terrible. It's disgusting. One of the saddest days of my DMing career. They used a maze spell on it. And then they waited around and they set up every mega blaster, rifle, laser pistol, grenades, everything. And they just set up and waited for it to reappear. When that poor bastard reappeared on the bridge, they just incinerated it. It was terrible.
For dinner.
It never laid a single hand on them. Came across the bridge and they just mazed it and then they destroyed it.
Well, that story was riveting. Riveting.
Did you say
Never
riveting?
Mind.
Because that's horrible.
Riveting. I said riveting, and it was horrible. It was meant to be horrible.
So do you think the picture of the Arum Vorax is after someone's Cocker Spaniel or maybe they're a golden retriever on a bad, maybe trying to feed their golden retriever a pill. I don't know.
It could be. I always took the Aurum Vorax to be a poke at the Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah.
The college football team.
There were batters in, what were they? Batters. Badders in Gamma World. Batters.
Yes. One of the first critters my Friday night live stream Gamma World crew fought were batters. Those cowards just hid from the Blash. It's something about not wanting to get hit with an EMP radiation blast. I don't know. The infamous Trifon flower, just in case, your party isn't. And I look at that thing, and all I can picture is This Side of Paradise, the old Star Trek episode.
Yeah, where they get the blast of pollen spores in the face.
I'm in love, Jim. Do, 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 do. Which has
lots of great plant art by Jim Rosloff.
Yes. Arguably one of the
Squealer number 41 is awesome by Errol
The
Otis.
Squealer, yeah.
That it's got one hand to hang in the trees, and then 3 legs to then it's got, so it hangs in the trees with 1 claw, and then it mauls you with 4 claws and bites you at the same time.
Yeah. Prehensile tail? No.
No, we're just going to put an arm coming out of the back of this thing. And it's going to be jacked armed.
The illustration in Monster Manual 2, the arm looks like it's coming out of its hindquarters.
That's right. It doesn't
Which I
have
guess
quite the threatening alien look as this one.
It doesn't, but at the same time, you can kind of appreciate why it's always so hostile. Although the ability to scratch one's own back with it just incredible ease would have to be. Let's see. Was that all of our color plates though, or is it just no? We've got some robots.
Right. There's the police, or I think it's a security station.
Yes, it is. It is not the central police station, but it is a security station.
But there are more police robots in that police substation than anywhere else. In our game, one of the guys was captured and taken to this police station, and the party had to go and rescue them. It was the toughest fight they had ever had in their 12 levels of adventure.
Wow.
I think there were 4 or 5 security robots that they fought at once, and it was just a heinous battle.
Yeah. Let's see. This piece right here, the I always thought, Jeff D's Dinosauroids there is nice, but the
corkscrew grass or whatever it's called.
Yeah, vampire grass. I
think that might be the corkscrew stuff. There's 2 kinds of grass: stranglevine, shambling mound, brilliant fish, vampire thorn. What is this stuff?
Oh yeah, I was conflating it with vampire thorns.
Purple blossoms. Deadly plant section. Low grass. That's what it's called. Low grass.
Yeah. This is another Rosloff piece, and it is.
This is the deadly boring grass. And that's boring as in boring through your skin, as opposed to boring grass.
Yeah. As opposed to just sitting outside and watching it grow. That stuff boring. That will dig right into you.
Oh my God, this grass is boring.
Oh my God. Okay, so we have
experiences entirely.
And then I think we've seen that. That's like basically when you get to one of the terrarium levels, and looking into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great Errol Otis there.
And then we're back to the park. Yeah, that's it. But still,
we're almost through this thing.
Still, just the few colored plates. Again, you've got a module here which lets you build a science fiction campaign if you want to. It's got not just an illustrated section. I mean, imagine like cracking this thing open in 1980 after it first comes out, and you have these gorgeous, like, heavy metal magazine-esque vibrant colors just popping out at you. I mean, this really is, as far as production values for a module goes, the peak of TSR, just in my opinion. So let's see. We have the deadly purple blossom, the deadly tri-flower plant. Deadly. Gary, we get it. Deadly, 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 horrid. And then globe palm. Globe palm. Yeah, exactly. Oh, the globe palm. That must be okay, right? No, it's. I like this one. He just ran out of stuff to call it. The horrid plant. The globe palm. Tall, slender trees are topped with 5 to 8 globe-like fruits of coconut size. They're blue, violet, or lilac. Walking under one of these palms makes it 20% likely that one of the globes will fall. And if the tree is brushed, it is 90% probable. And yeah, you get covered with all kinds of nasty stuff. Let's see. The fluid inside is most nauseating. Any creature splashed will spend the next 3 rounds vomiting and will be ill at only 50% of normal strength for 6 turns. There's no saving throw. The affected character, if the affected character is washed with wine, the smell will go away, but otherwise an odor will continue for 12 turns, and this will attract all monsters within 50 feet of the affected creature. The palm is armor class 8 and takes 31 to 40 hit points to cut through its trunk. Why would you? Just leave it alone.
Well, look at page 16, 17 and the centerfold art by Rosloff there.
Let's see, 16 and 17.
Of just the regular module, not the illustration. 16 and 17 of the module booklet.
Okay, we're almost there. We're over here. We're on 14, 15.
So just one 16. More down. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see the 2-page spread, but it shows the baboonoids hurling the globe fruit against the adventurers who, because now they stink and they're throwing up, are then attract the shambling mounds to come and attack them. It's a horrible encounter. It did not go well for my party.
Yeah. I got to tell you, shambling mounds, like, generally most parties have been smart enough to run away, but I always lean away from taking the shambling encounter die roll when a party is marching through a swamp. Like, everybody's like average 3.5 level. Okay, let's see what's happening. Okay. 4 shambling mounds. Nothing. You don't encounter anything.
This was the first time that my magic user discovered that lightning bolts actually cure shambling mounds and makes them grow larger.
Whoops.
And when it happened in the game, the quote was, "Of course it does."
Of course. Whatever.
Of course it does. And the other thing was, is that really in the book, or are you picking that up?
Whatever knows fear burns at the touch of the man thing.
Nice.
So classic comics, man.
Yeah.
So we got wheelie sleds, radiation areas, and we oh my gosh, it is getting to be a late hour. I didn't know if you wanted to push into the theater, athletic, and activity deck.
I think we should, because one of the coolest encounters ever is coming up. I mean,
okay.
Obviously, there's the 2 Shedu, which are down there.
Language, Paul. Oh, Shedu. Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I thought you said something naughty.
Oh, wait a second. There's the athletic the physical fitness android. Oh, there's so much good stuff. I don't know.
Oh yeah, so there's a couple of androids down here. One is a wrestling trainer, and I'm a little heartbroken because it's a wrestling trainer, not a wrestling trainer. So
But
when you
he does say, wait, no, that's the physical fitness android who says,
Yeah.
"Catch, Butterfingers. Let's have some hustle. You'll never make the team that way."
yeah, like throwing 45-kilogram lead weights at you. Yeah, no, I would have the android just full macho man Randy Savage, Welcome to the circle squared where the cream rises to the top. Oh yeah. And then roll for initiative. That's me. Dungeon Masters, you may want to do it differently. Paul, you may want to do it. Little bit of a plum. And he's got his own wrestling table he can use on you.
And
then
is he
we
the
got
one that says leg broken? That happened to one of my guys. That happened to one of our adventurers. He got his leg broken in that battle.
Oh God.
Better than I gouged out, of course. That's the problem with D&D. It's all fun and games until it's the only part of the game that I think is a little wrong, because you can get hit in the head with a mace and not lose your eyesight. But if you get into a wrestling match with somebody, they could gouge your eye.
Thumbs to the eyes, man. Go straight for the eyes. So yeah, we have
terrible.
We have the fencing instructor, female robot with a faulty AP, which delivers 2 to 5 hit points of damage every time she stabs you with it.
Did you see? I think the best illustration of the robots is number 46, the boxing robot. That guy looks like he could beat Mike Tyson.
The boxing robot. So illustration 46. He looks like a help me out here. He looks like no. Oh God, what is it? A Sentinel from the X-Men.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
He looks a bit like a Sentinel from the X-Men, and he's here to punch mutants.
Those ham fists.
I know, right?
That's gonna hurt.
That is gonna leave a mark. So we have the but I could have sworn the dialogue was here.
Oh, it's on page 19 for the physical fitness android. He's the only one who has
it's further down. Yeah. So just in case you've made it to this level, adventurers, you've got Lady Saren and Noble Knight were turned into green and brown pygmies. They don't even recognize us anymore. Bob stepped into a machine and he's gone. He just kind of screamed a little bit. We don't know. He looked into a thing that he thought was a viewfinder and his head disappeared. We come into this room and a robot starts insulting us. Area 6. Physical fitness android use illustration 49, which we've seen. Another malfunctioning android awaits the party. As soon as the party enters, it will spring into action. There are a number of plates for barbells, dumbbells, and other heavy objects nearby, and the android will hurl these at the party. These strike 7-hit die monsters, causing 2 to 20 points of damage. A score of 20 means the victim has a broken limb, determined randomly. All the while the android is throwing these objects, it will be shouting, "Work up a sweat there. Catch, Butterfingers. Let's have some hustle. And you'll never make the team that way." So you're getting beaten to a pulp, and this robot is trying to just, bro, do you even lift?
It's a gym bro yelling at you.
Gym bro. It's a brobot.
It's a brobot. Nice. That was classic.
Trapped android and 40 gas bats.
The trapped android. That's the one that if you rescue it, it serves you as a bodyguard. And that happened in our game, and his name was AV, which stood for Android Valet. But
Nice.
AV served our illusionist as his bodyguard for the rest of her days.
Oh, nice. Luther says that fitness robot is trying to erode my self-esteem. Me too. Me too. I know what it looks like in the illustration, but I just had it's like, if you guys are familiar with the meme, the Giga Chad, the guy with like the insanely well-defined face and closely cropped beard. Google it. You know what I'm talking about.
Dave versus existential crisis.
Yes.
I'm worthless. Okay, now we come to the coolest combat ever, the coolest encounter ever in this whole adventure.
The Mind Flayer.
And the art. Come on.
I use the art for tonight's thumb, but I will show it on screen. The Mind Flayer. Now, first of all, this answers the question. If you've ever looked at a creature with psionic abilities, just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and asked, should I also give it disciplines? Yes. Because the Mind Flayer has one, therefore, all bets are off. That makes the Intellect Devourer a little bit more horrifying, because it's not just going to stand there and scratch you, bad kitty, no. It can actually do stuff to your head. So the Mind Flayer, illustration on cover of art book, and we'll hop over there and we'll hop up here. See if I can. There we go. That is some sci-fi horror happening right there. Lovely Yellow by Jeff D. And I love frame breaks. They are scattered through classic D&D art, and I love that he is falling out of the panel, the three-dimensionality of it. Michael Connor says, oh no, it's Vecna's General. Whoops. Hey, there's a D&D book, not the one we're after. So this Mind Flayer is pretty much the penultimate battle in S3. We've seen the illustration.
And he knows how to use all of the technology.
Yep. The only thing your party has going for you in this fight is that he can't fit in power armor. That's it. So he's got 7th level mastery of all of this stuff. ESP, domination, body equilibrium, levitation, probability travel. He can just pop out of existence if you're too much of a hassle. He was taken when using probability travel, is kept on the ship by the force fields, and we've talked about that.
He has a poison gas grenade.
Yeah. Because, getting hit 4 times with psionic blast, there might be some of you left, so click, have that.
And can you imagine what would happen if the guy in power armor, who is probably a fighter, who probably has fairly low intelligence, gets hit by psionic blast? The most common thing to happen to fighters is they become enraged and attack their own party.
Now you have a crazy man wearing a mobile infantry suit. Godspeed. So he's got some loot. Paul bitching about loot. It's right there, Paul.
That's because he brought it from the regular treasure world.
Well,
desert world,
and it's on the ship, and you said it wasn't, and it's right there. All but the spotlight are on the creature's body. There's a 10% chance it will be away, checking up on the Shadoo, which it hates and fears.
So great.
If the Mind Flayer is away, there's a 20% chance that it will come back. As soon as it hears the Shriekers or sees intruders, it will attack. It fears to use its psionic strength. It will use the blaster and grenades, hoping they will suffice. A given warning, he'll set up the spotlight with a trip cord.
Spotlight.
Yeah.
It comes into use.
Yeah. Of course, the party might be terrified if they see the thing set up with a tripwire, because, again, what does it look like? It looks like one of the horrible panels that does terrible things. And of course, he'll use Mind Flare Blast. And then finally, there are worker robots, which we've seen in illustration 50, and they're cleaning out stasis cages. And we covered a lot, and I think we can look at some of the gear, some of the equipment.
Well, I'd like to say one more thing about this level, the pool level and the athletic level and the theater level.
Okay.
So you see the center has the black square on the map, or the solid filled in blue square.
Hang on, let me get that's wrong.
That's one of the maps, yeah. So see that right there? This is at the very bottom of the ship, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The lake is 100 feet deep. Okay? That blue stuff in the middle is the bottom of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the cross section, well, you don't have to look at the cross section, but essentially, if you look at the cross section of the ship, the lake is 100 feet deep. I calculated, well, and so my party went around this whole section over and over again. There's no door. They're like, how comes we can't get to the central area? This might be the area where they have the charging stations and we can recharge the coins. And this might be where all the treasure is. And there's got to be something there. So my party was convinced they had to get into that area. But it's the bottom of a 100-foot deep lake with 1.85 million cubic feet of water in it. And they were going to use a pass wall to go through the wall to get to the other side. So when they suggested this course of action, I said, well, let's do that next week and we'll get to. And I calculated that given the PSI of 1.85 cubic, which is about is about 13.84 million gallons of water in that lake. And I calculated at that PSI that 100,000 gallons would come out every minute.
Good Lord.
At several hundred PSI. And it will fill the entire deck, this whole deck, 270 feet in radius, 540 feet in diameter. It would fill the entire deck with 7 foot of water.
You're going to need the shop vac. And the Froghemoth. Yeah, you're going to need the shop vac.
Sadly, somebody looked at their maps and said, this has got to be the bottom of the lake. If we go in there, we'll all drown.
So Marcelo was not a TPK. They were wise enough to not open it. Questions about what's playing in the theaters. I'm going to be bold because it's my favorite film and say Blade Runner is playing in one of those theaters. Leave it to the party to figure out whether or not, they can understand it. So there's a question for you, Paul. Do you have it in your campaign that the ship's origin point is in fact Earth?
Yes.
As do I. Do I.
And the name of the ship is probably the Warden 2.
Interesting choice. There's a model of it in C1.
And that is why I think that this is the Warden 2.
that jives. There's also some tech items from the ship.
Il
Nedraw. There's one trivia for you. Do you know what other tech item that may well be from this ship is in C1? I
don't.
There are stun rods. Rubber handles. Silver. They're basically silver batons. So whoever brought the model ship, the little anti-gravity model ship, must have had a stun rod or two with them because they are in Hidden Shrine of Tomicon.
Well, maybe that very large that very large ziggurat temple covered with jungle is section 4 of the spaceship.
Could be.
Somewhere in the jungles of the Emidio jungle is another one of these sections.
Yeah. Maybe a Cerarax sphere of annihilation is just a section of the ship's drive, the antimatter and
antimatter drive fragment.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to build a dungeon around that. So there you go, guys. I think that's a pretty good tour about a guided tour from someone who knows the module about as well as any single person can. And it was a lot of fun. You couldn't have asked for a better trip through S3. And we all made that out alive. Nobody got irradiated. And everybody except for Luther, I've got my eyes on him, is not a veg pygmy. But we certainly appreciate it, Paul. We're going to have that Jim Rosseloff tribute show soon, real soon. Don't make summer plans. Don't do it. I will have you back here on the show real soon because I do want to talk about Jim. Thank you for watching, Braxton. And speaking of thanks, I like to take just a hot minute here because there's some great folks who help literally keep the lights on around these parts. So let me thank Joshua Garlock, Lord Corion, Ricky Maru, Mobius, Kevin Reynolds, Doomsword Deathmaster, Mark Simpson, Damien247, James F. Keck, William Smith, the Dungeon Minister, Manny Wall, Mark Corey, Kevin Wood, who I have gamed with for well over 30 years now. Good friend of mine, Kevin is. Todd Sharp, Carnivore Farmer, which is a frightening enough name. Rob knows I can't say that, Gillis. Jeremy Roll, Boganora, Mikey Mank, Sky Hernstrom, Pete Sullivan, and John David. Thank you all very much for helping out. I do appreciate it. And if you're just cruising by, if the algorithm said, go watch these two crazy people talk about AD&D, then please consider clicking that subscribe button and that bell icon for notifications. We sure do appreciate it. When are you coming back, Paul? When are you free next?
I've got all summer.
Excellent. So do I.
My sprinkler system, so anytime you want to take me away from that, I'll be happy.
That's great. Well, you have a very narrow window because in about exactly 10 and a half weeks, it'll happen on a Wednesday. In 10 and a half weeks, you're going to step outside and it's going to be 51 degrees. And It's just downhill from there. So,
or uphill both ways in the snow.
Uphill both ways in the snow. Meanwhile, we get about 3 days of winter down here. So
I think that's why this is the greatest module, because it's not about the treasure. It's not about the magic items. It's about the adventure itself and figuring out the mystery. Because the only reason to really be in there is for the mystery of it and to solve it. And that's why I think it's a superior module to a lot of other modules, which have a pretty typical formula. So
yes. And I will heap more glory on it. And even though I'm going to sound like a broken record when I'm saying this, guys, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you love AD&D, but you want to do something science fiction-y more than just put the characters in a fish out of water scenario like this, you have the tools in the Dungeon Master's Guide and this module. That's all you need. You can craft your own science fiction setting and have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. You've got the blueprints right here. So if that's something you want to do, take a chance. Have some fun with it. Your players will get a kick out of it, I bet. And if nothing else, you ran them through one of the greatest modules of all time. Next in our series, we're going to talk about S4, aka T5, or WG
4.
S4.
No,
S4 was
WG5.
Yeah.
It was WG5. Because it was supposed to follow WG4, Tharsden, then WG5, Sochkanth, right?
Yes. And then Hamlet was supposed to be WG1, TOEE was WG2, WG3 would have been...
Maybe that was supposed to be Sochkanth, and then WG4 was supposed to be that. I don't remember.
No. We'll figure it out when we get there.
I failed you in my trivia knowledge.
I forgive you. As Dungeon Minister would say, te absolve. So thank you again, though, for stopping by, Paul. We're going to jump into S4 tomorrow night. S4 is one of my favorite modules of all time. It's like B2, S4. That's how close those modules are in awesomeness in my mind. So again, we thank Paul Stormberg for stopping by, and we thank you guys for sitting out there and listening to us. Everybody have a wonderful Thursday, and we'll see you all tomorrow night. Peace out.